1783, a new nation had won its independence. Restless pioneers turned their eyes toward new frontiers. Good land to the west. A few ventured forth over the Wilderness Road and the Mohawk Trail, into the fertile valleys of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Ohio. 1815, the Great Migration into Indiana and Illinois, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The journey was long and hard. 1820, 2.5 million people between the Alleghenies and the Mississippi. As the frontier moved westward, linking east with west became more urgent. Better transportation was needed to take the farmer's surplus to eastern markets, to return the manufactured products he required. Water transportation was cheaper for this trade, but the rivers flowed to the west and to the south. Many rivers were not navigable, so canals were built, man-made waterways, boats and barges carrying corn and meat, wheat and timber, a transportation network spreading across our growing nation. By 1860, 12 million people between the Alleghenies and the Mississippi, 4,000 miles of canal, joining east and west. Today, little is left of this once great network of canals, a water-filled ditch cutting through the countryside. Here and there, the ruins of an old lock, engineering feats that attest to the skill and determination of the men who built the canals. Not even a mountain blocked the progress of a canal. The men who built this tunnel did not have modern earth-moving equipment. They had only simple tools, their strong backs, and stubborn perseverance. When rivers blocked the way, bridges called aqueducts were built to carry the level canal over the stream. In building canals, it was necessary to provide level stretches of quiet water. When the level of the land changed, locks were built to carry the canal to the new elevation. A lock was like a step in a flight of stairs. It raised and lowered boats from one level of water to the other. This was called locking through. Since the lock retarded the flow of the water, a spillway around it was usually necessary. Nearby lived the persons who tended the locks. Boats and barges that traveled the canal were towed by mules or sometimes horses. The mules walked alongside the canal on a path called the towpath. To lock through a boat coming up canal, the tow line was cast off, and the boat coasted into the lock. Often the boat would just fit. It took great skill to guide a boat without damaging the walls of the locks or the sides of the boat. When the boat was in the lock, the back gates were closed. Then water was let in by opening paddles or small doors near the bottom of the upper gates. When the water level in the lock reached the water level in front of the lock, the upper gates were opened and the tow line again fastened to the boat. Locking through usually took about 10 minutes. After many years of neglect, few locks are still standing. However, in some places, sections of canals have been restored and the locks reconstructed. One reconstruction is a portion of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal near Washington, D.C. Here, people come for recreation and to learn about this important phase of our American heritage. This crumbling structure was once the home of a family that tended this section of the canal, people who played an essential role in the operation of the canal. What sort of life did they live in 1845 along the towpaths west?
Come listen now while I will sing you a song. It's not very short and it's not very long, of life on the canal with all of its joys, of the men and the barges, the mules and the boys. The freight boat is towed by two stubborn mules. I swear that they are the darndest of fools, but they do what we ask them without a delay, as they tow us up canal 40 miles in a day. The captain's the steersman, his family is large. They live on the canal and sleep on the barge. His son drives the mules, has for 13 long years. He'll soon have his own boat, the canal to steer. So pull on the tow line and take up the slack. Take a hitch in your britches and straighten your back. Through sunshine and rain on the towpath you walk, and it's touch up the mules when they kick and they balk. So snub up the tow line and take up the slack. Close the down gates, heave to with your back. The captain is anxious to be on his way to pick up his cargo before a new day. While the water is rising, the women folk chat. They talk about fashions and all this and that. But soon they must go, they must be on their way. God, a long piece yet to go this fine day. So open the up gate, heave to with your back, and hitch up the mules now, take up the slack. Through sunshine and rain on the towpath you walk, and it's touch up the mules when they kick and they balk. Life on the canal? Well, it was mostly hard work. Take Mike Riley here, for instance. His father looks after a section of the canal, tends the locks, keeps up the spillway. He's paid $100 a month by the canal company and was given this house to live in. The Rileys plant a garden, but they get most of what they need from the barges that go up and down the canal. Along the canal, everyone's got to work. Every day, Mike walks the 10-mile section of the canal that the Rileys take care of. He keeps the canal clear of debris, fallen trees and branches, and fills up the holes in the towpath. Muskrats and other burrowing animals dig holes in the canal banks, so the canal company pays Mike extra for each one he traps. The C&O Canal runs alongside the Potomac River. In fact, that's where the water for the canal comes from. The canal company built a dam across the river. It makes the water run into a feeder channel that flows into the canal. Since he was 8, Mike has walked the towpath every day the canal's been open. But one day, something happened that changed his whole life. A driver'd been hurt. Cussed mule tromped on his foot. The barge was headed down canal to Georgetown. Captain Swain needed a new driver bad. Because he and the Rileys were old friends, he thought of Mike right away. Mike's father allowed as how Mike could handle the mules all right and said he could go. So the Rileys took in the injured driver, and Mike got the chance he'd been waiting for. Mike and those mules hit it off right away. Mike showed him who was boss. Captain Swain's cargo was timber, a few barrels of flour, and a hold full of coal. Going down canal with the current, they could make about 4 miles an hour. From the towpath, Mike could see the Potomac River far down below. At 13 years old, my new life began, a-drivin' the mules, good work for a man. You can talk of your pleasures of sails on a lake, but a trip down the canal, it sure takes the cake. The canal is wide, the canal is deep. It cuts through the mountains, rocky and steep. There's many a sight as we travel along. The canal is calm, the canal is long. The captain told tales of a cook he once had. She talked night and day, nearly driving him mad. She's cross-eyed and knock-kneed, a redhead by heck. He used her for a headlight at night on the deck. So pull on the tow line and take up the slack. Take a hitch in your britches and straighten your back. Through sunshine and rain long the towpath you go, and it's touch up the mules if they're moving too slow. Along the canal there were inns where travelers could stay. But many travelers stayed on the passenger boats. These boats were called packets. Got to where most people would rather travel on a packet than on a stagecoach, better on a man's disposition. Packets were drawn by horses, and everybody tried to have the fastest team. Packet drivers were all spruced up, a uniform with brass buttons and a fancy cap. What Mike wouldn't give to have one of those. Captain Swain knew just about everyone along the canal. He was always full of news and a couple of good yarns. The faster packets could travel almost 100 miles in a day. Cost about 4 cents a mile. You could eat and sleep there, too. Ladies on one side, men on the other. Most people thought the packets were pretty elegant, but they were mighty crowded. 50 people sleeping and eating on one boat is just too many. At times, the towpath switched from one side of the canal to the other. Mike had to unhitch the mules and lead them over the crossover bridge to the other side of the canal. Then hitch up the mules and we'll be on our way. We've 20 more miles to travel this day, for we're bound for Georgetown, our cargo to sell. We'll get there by nightfall if all goes well. So pull on the tow line and take up the slack. Take a hitch in your britches and straighten your back. Through sunshine and rain long the towpath you go, and touch up the mules if they're moving too slow. Coming into Georgetown, Mike saw lots of new sights. Big bridges above the canal, and even a tunnel running underneath. At the end of the line, the mules were unhitched, and the dock crew pulled the barge on in. We came into Georgetown about 6 o'clock. They pulled the barge in, made it fast to the dock. The cargo's unloaded, we've not long to stay. With a new load tomorrow, we'll be on our way. Mike had never been in a big town before. Captain Swain paid him $1. And you know the first thing he did? He bought himself a packet driver's cap. How fine it felt to be a driver on the Great Canal.
By the middle of the 19th century, canals like those Mike knew were beginning to disappear. There were various reasons. Some canals were poorly constructed. Some cost more to maintain than the revenue they earned. Others had been built in areas where there was too little trade. And when the railroads came, most canals could not stand the competition. Railroads were much faster, could run all year, and were less likely to be damaged by the recurrent floods that ravaged the canals. Most of these great canals are gone, but many of the shops, mills, and towns along their banks became the factories, industries, and cities of today. This exciting time lives on in the pages of our nation's history and in the famous landmarks that take us back once more along towpaths west.